All right. We want to thank everybody for joining us this morning for RECON 2016, the Retail Coach webinar on how to bring retail home. Um, my name is Aaron Farmer, Senior Vice President for the Retail Coach. I will be leading the webinar this morning. I've also got Bryce London, our Director of Retail Services, that is going to be on the webinar as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. A couple of quick housekeeping items. You should see a control on your screen on the right side of your screen that shows a place to ask questions. As we're going through this webinar, if you have questions, feel free to ask those questions there, and we'll try to get to them either during the presentation or after. And if we don't get to them during the presentation, we've got your email address, and we'll follow up with you after the webinar. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll go ahead and get started here. As I mentioned, this webinar is called RECON 2016. We're about 25 days or so away from the ICSC RECON conference in Las Vegas. For those of you who aren't aware of ICSC, ICSC is the International Council of Shopping Centers. This is an organization that's been around for a number of years. And it's a place for communities, retailers, developers to get together and really focus on making deals, getting out in front of retailers, getting out in front of developers. We're going to go ahead and switch to the next slide here. Today, we want to talk about, in our agenda, we're going to first focus on the retail outlook. What's happening in 2016? We then want to look at what retailers' expansion plans are. You've probably seen it just making a drive to your community or driving through whatever state you're from. You can see retailers and developers popping up out of the ground. Developments are taking place, small developments, but also larger developments, really wherever you are in the U.S. So we want to talk about what expansion plans retailers have, and then we also want to talk about RECON 2016, some goals, preparation, marketing materials, strategy, and targeting. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure you're prepared. It can be overwhelming to go out to ICSC, to this RECON conference. It's such a large conference, and you need to be prepared. So we're hopeful this webinar will help you in that process. So we'll start with talking about the retail outlook for 2016. We'll start with looking at some of the trends, the effects, and the growth that we're seeing in the industry. So some of the trends we're seeing right now, number one is revitalization. Retail revitalization is continuing as national and regional brands seek these untapped opportunities in entrepreneurism. I was in a meeting yesterday with a developer that is focused on redeveloping a specific downtown area. So revitalization, redevelopment is something we're seeing throughout the country. We're seeing minimal speculative retail development. So we're not seeing the strip centers going up without retailers already signed up. Most of what we're seeing is pre-leased buildings that are going up. That seems to be the trend. I think a lot of these retailers, a lot of these developers got burned several years ago during the recession, and because of that, they're being much more careful and really not focusing on that speculative development as much. But what we're seeing are those thriving communities are those that have a healthy mix of independence, but also have a strong and successful mix of national and regional brands as well. So we're going to talk to you about really how this retail industry is evolving. The retail this evolution of the retail industry has really accelerated over the last decade or so. What we're seeing is online retail sales. They're basically growing at a rate of about 10% uh, from from 2012 to 2017. And this is kind of a crazy number, and I had to double check it. But by 2017, the web, the internet sales will account for roughly 10% of all retail sales. And I hate to admit it, but it's just convenient sometimes to go online and purchase something on an iPad or on the computer quickly and have it delivered to your door. So because of that, retailers are really having to focus, really having to pay attention to this. We're starting to see those brick and mortar retailers evolve, and we're going to talk more about that. So a couple of things of what to expect, and some of the things we're already seeing as far as the retail industry goes. At the top here, you'll see smaller footprints. We're seeing these retailers that maybe had a larger footprint. Maybe you can use Hobby Lobby as an example. We closed the deal with Hobby Lobby in Elk City, Oklahoma yesterday, and Elk City is on the southwestern side of the state of Oklahoma. Well, Hobby Lobby in the past would have stores that were roughly about 100,000 square feet. Now they've really shrunk the size of their stores, and we're seeing them come in and doing about a 55,000 square feet location. That's the size of the one that's going into Elk City. Um, we're seeing Office Depot, Office Max with that merger that took place. Instead of taking 15 to 25,000 square feet of space, Office Max is doing more satellite type locations now, where they're focused on maybe five to 10,000 square feet is what they're focused on. But we're also, what this does, it's a reduction of overhead and occupancy costs for these retailers. They're more efficient locations. They've got new store formats. But and then also you'll see in the white box there, we're seeing a lot of store closures as well. Those retailers that cannot compete with their competition, cannot compete in the industry, we're starting to see retailers close. A good example would be Sports Authority, which just a couple of weeks ago announced they were filing for bankruptcy and closing, I think, close to 200 stores. So those are just a few of the things where we expect to see in the next few months and in the next year or so. There's really two factors or two basic factors that are impacting retailer demand and expansion. Number one is the economy. We're really starting to see strong activity on the far ends of the economic spectrum. So we're seeing those discount retailers expand rapidly. Good examples of those would be maybe somebody like TJ Maxx, maybe Home Goods or Ross. We're seeing those expand rapidly in that junior anchor space. But then we're seeing those luxury retailers expand as well. And we're going to talk about a little bit later in this presentation specific retailers that are expanding in sectors that are expanding and where maybe you need to focus your recruitment. And then the other factor that's really impacting retailer demand and expansion is e-commerce. And we talked about it a couple of slides back, but retailers, especially these brick and mortar retailers, are really having to figure out how to compete with e-commerce. That is, that's something that we're going to have to pay attention to, just because it's becoming such a big factor. We track roughly 3,000 retailer and restaurant chains throughout the country. What a couple of things I pulled out of there. What I thought was interesting was about 40% of the growth in the retail industry is restaurants, and you can see that wherever you go. A lot of that restaurant growth is the fast casuals, and when we say fast casual, we're talking about somebody like Chipotle or somebody like Zoe's Kitchen. Those are some of the things that we are really seeing throughout the industry, but restaurant is really dominating that growth. We're seeing a lot of those shopping centers that maybe did not have restaurants or did not have food-based companies previously. we're seeing those take over a lot of the tenant mixes, a lot of those restaurants going into even sometimes second generation space. Um, and then we're also seeing grocery players becoming more of a staple at power centers and malls. Maybe those spaces at those power centers and malls that can't be filled. We're starting to see, obviously, some restaurants come in, but we're also starting to see some of those specialty grocers and some of those larger grocers as well take up some of that space. As far as the retailers that are expanding in 2016, I just want to run through this list really quick, but these are the sectors that we're seeing expand. We're seeing those fitness, those health, those spa concepts. They're expanding rapidly. We're seeing the drugstores, your CVS, your Walgreens, expand rapidly as well. We're seeing the thrift stores, so your Salvation Army, your um, Goodwill stores, they're expanding rapidly. Same thing with your smaller format grocery stores. Many of you probably have seen Aldi um, come into your community recently. They're an interesting grocery store, but they seem to be doing well. You're seeing Sprouts, some of the organic type grocery stores, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's that are expanding really in a smaller format. Fast food seems to just continue to expand. That fast casual dining brand we talked about is expanding rapidly and continue to expand. Once again, that's Chipotle, Zoe's Kitchen, some of the others like that. We're seeing those automotive companies expand rapidly as well. Um, and really, I mentioned this already, but those discounters, those TJ Maxx, those off-price apparel, still seeing a lot of expansion from dollar stores and pet supply stores. Wireless stores are expanding. Home improvement is expanding as well. Whether it's Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, or some of the others, we're seeing them expand rapidly. And then also furniture stores. Furniture stores seem to be doing well in 2016, and we're expecting that to be the case in 2017 as well. Now, those retailers that are contracting or not expanding as fast, and in many cases closing stores. Number one is bookstores. You hate to see it, but bookstores are becoming a thing of the past. People can pick up their Kindle and order a book from Amazon, in a minute's time. So that's going to continue. Video stores. I remember as a kid going into video stores or going into Blockbuster, on Friday nights. I mean, that was our go-to. Was on Friday nights we would go get a video to watch as a family or video games. Um, your mid-priced apparel is not expanding as rapidly. Your mid-priced grocery not expanding as rapidly as well, depending on what part of the country you're in. Office supplies with the merger of Office Depot, Office Max, Staples. Office Depot has really slowed down their growth. I mentioned it already, but they're shrinking the size of their stores as well. And then stationery and gift shops. So, the Hallmark type stores are becoming a thing of the past. I remember when those used to be in just about every community, but they're becoming a thing of the past. And same thing with shipping and postal stores. With the exception of maybe the UPS store, you're starting to see these shipping and postal stores go away. Once again, being able to buy postage, being able to ship a package just by printing out from your computer, that's really impacting that industry. So those are some of the tricks, some of the trends, some of the things that we're really seeing in the retail industry in 2016, leading into 2017. But now we really want to focus on ICSC RECon 2016. And we've had a few join us just within the last few minutes, so I want to mention ICSC again. ICSC is the International Council of Shopping Centers. Um, it was founded many years back, but International Council of Shopping Centers, they have their ICSC Recon Conference, which is their largest. It's worldwide conference. It happens in Las Vegas every year. This year, I believe it's May 22nd through the 25th. So we've got about 25 days or so, give or take a few, to prepare for that conference. Um, I want to share with you the ICSC Recon Conference is taking place just as it has every year at the Las Vegas Convention Center. And if you've never been to the Las Vegas Convention Center, it is a huge operation. They've got 4 or 5 different halls. ICSC, this Recon conference, will be using each of those halls. So you can see on the screen here, you can see the North Hall, you can see the Central Hall, the South Hall, lower level, and then the South Hall, upper level. This will be where you are focused. This will be where the booths are set up for the retailers and set up for the developers. The most of your retailers and developers will be in the Central, South Hall, lower level, and then South Hall, upper level, which we have highlighted here. But you will see on the left side of your screen, you'll see the North Hall. Just looking at the agenda, just looking at the program today, there are quite a few retailers that are in the North Hall as well this year. So really, all of the halls will have retailers and developers. It takes you a good 10 minutes to walk from the South Hall to the North Hall, and it's Las Vegas, and it's usually really hot. And to get there, you have to walk outside. So what I would recommend is wearing comfortable shoes, and making sure when you're setting up meetings with retailers and developers that you give yourself enough time to get from hall to hall if you're having to deal with meetings in separate halls. The North Hall is where a lot of your brokers and your developers and where the retailer square is, and also the marketplace mall. So make sure you spend a lot of time in the North Hall as well. As I mentioned, a lot of your brokers will be there and a lot of the developers. And really, no matter where you're at in the country, a lot of the new retail growth in the U.S. is developer driven. So make sure you're going out to ICSC not to just focus on retailer recruitment, but to focus on that developer and that broker recruitment as well. Just so you can see where our booth is, we are in the North Hall. Our booth number is N2028U. You can kind of see the R on the floor plan there. That's where our booth is. We'd love for you to stop by. We're going to have some refreshments and some other things, and we'd love to meet with you. So if you get a chance, come by our booth. Once again, it's booth number N2028U. And you can also go ahead and start studying the floor plans. You can see the link on the screen here. But if you just go to the ICSC Recon show and click on show website and click on map your show, you can actually see where where retailers' booths are, where developers are. And as I mentioned, it's such a large place. This is key. Make sure you're paying attention to where your meetings are and giving yourself enough time to get over there. So we put together really 12 tips or 12 goals for getting the most out of ICSC Recon and really how to prepare for it. So I'm going to run through those goals pretty quickly here. Once again, if you have any questions on any of the things we're talking about, there's a question box where you can type in your answer and we'll get to it. Also, if you would rather just email us a question or you want to talk after this webinar, you can email us at info, so INFO, at theretailcoach.net. So that's info at theretailcoach.net. But feel free to ask any questions you have. I've seen a couple of questions come across so far. Our first tip for Recon is set realistic goals. I think this is key. Your goal out there, some of your goals should be to meet people and make connections. Don't plan on going to ICSC Recon to make a deal. You're going out there to make connections. Maybe you meet with a retailer and then 6 months later down the road they end up putting a store in your community. But don't go out there planning to make a deal unless you're already very far along with the retailer or developer. Make sure you attend all social functions. Can't stress that enough. I know ICSC in the afternoon on Sunday and evening they have a reception they're hosting, as well as a lot of retailers and developers are hosting these receptions as well. So make sure you RSVP your group for those and you're part of those. And then also attend those educational seminars. I noticed there's some really good seminars this year and workshops on trends, on what it takes to do a development, on what retailers are expanding. There's one seminar that really interests me. It talks about new concepts, and it talks about some of the new retailers that are moving into the market. So make sure you attend those as well. And then to wrap up this slide, to wrap up the goals slide, make sure you manage the expectations of your council and your board. I can't stress that enough. I know that's as economic development or municipality officials, managing those expectations of your council and your board is important. And like I said, you're going out there to make connections. You're not going out there to make a deal. So keep that in mind. Number two is talks about preparation. Know your market, research. Know what your community demographic profile is. Know how large your retail trade area is, where consumers coming from to shop and eat. Know what retailers are there. Know what properties are available. That's the first question you'll get from a retailer or developer you meet with is, okay, so I like your community, but what sites are available? So make sure you know and you have a list or a database with you of what sites are available. Know what developments are planned, not just retail and commercial developments or hotel developments, but know where the housing's headed. That's going to interest retailers. Focus on those retail categories that could be supported by your community. If you're a town of 4,000, you don't have a major freeway running through your community, Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's are probably not a fit. So don't waste your time at the Cabela's or at the Cabela's booth or the Bass Pro Shops booth. Focus on those booths. Focus on those retailers that are expanding. Also, focus on the strengths and weaknesses of your competing communities. Know what sets you apart. Know what separates you from your competition. Our third tip here kind of deals with marketing. If you have an iPad, bring your iPad to the conference. Also have a personal binder for you of market information. Just some of the things you want to have available as a location map. Where are you located in the state? Depending on what community you're from, many of these retailers and developers might not have heard of you or might not know where you're located. So have that location map available. Make sure you have demographics, not just on your community, but also on your trade area. If you don't have 2016 demographics, get with me, get with us after this webinar, and we'll be able to help you get 2016 demographics. Don't go out to the show with 2015 or older demographics. Can't stress that enough. Retailers want to see up-to-date information. Have those properties that are available, land, pad sites, property specifics. Have an aerial photograph, primary retailers. Have an iPad with you if possible, or a computer, so that you can email right after you have a meeting or right after you talk to a site selector or developer. Have that iPad. Be able to email it to them the same day. You want to stay fresh on the mind. You want to stay in front of these retailers and developers. You don't want them to forget about you. So I mentioned this already, but have an iPad available. Have a one-page marketing piece. We put together a lot of these front and back marketing piece flyers for our clients. You can see on the screen here is one we put together for New Braunfels, Texas. Can't stress it enough, but don't go out there and take a huge package or a huge folder to hand over to a retailer. At the end of the ICSC conference, at the end of RECON, they'll have those big drum trash cans, and you'll walk by those big drum trash cans, and anybody that dropped off a huge binder or folder of information, these retailers and these developers, they've thrown them away in those trash cans. So make sure you have kind of a front and back flyer that really focuses on the location of where you're at, the demographics, the traffic counts, pertinent information that you'd want to share with a retailer in your first 5-minute meeting or so you have with these retailers. Number 4 deals with targeting, and I've got to go back a slide. But number 4 deals with targeting. Really identify your retail prospects. I mentioned this already a couple times, but target retailers that fit your community. Also, like I said, don't just focus on retailers, but target those brokers in your area as well. Many times the brokers are the gatekeepers for these retailers. Many times they're the tenant reps for these retailers, so focus on that as well as also developers. you really want to connect with prospects, retail prospects that can fill that gap, an identified gap you've found, as well as they can fill vacant space, they can fill land, or maybe it's a pad site in your community. You very much want to target the retailers and developers you're going after. Every retailer, and we're looking at tip number 5 here, which deals with targeting. Every retailer has a customer profile, or they have criteria that they require before they'll locate in a community. So a good example, we've got In-N-Out Burger on the screen, and you can see what they require on their sites. They require about 50,000 traffic count. They require about a 60,000 population in the trade area. They require 45,000 in median income. Um, Make sure when you're targeting these retailers, you fit their customer profile. If you have questions with that, shoot us a question or an email to us, and we'll get with you on that. You can go to ICSC.org, just the main 2016 Recon page, and you can actually find the broker and developer, those that are going to be there. So you can do a query on there, and you can say, what retailers are going to be here. It'll show you every retailer that's there and everybody representing them. And many times it'll show you what region they're focused on. So you want to make sure when you're reaching out to a site selector for a retailer or for a developer, you're focused on that broker that is part of your target area that works your community or your region. You want to have an elevator pitch that's put together. Many times you'll only get 3 to 5 minutes to pitch your community to these retailers, to these developers. You can see just a small little pitch we put together for a community, but that pitch says our community serves a regional retail trade area of approximately 95,000. Our primary retail area is anchored by Walmart, Kohl's, Hobby Lobby, and others. We've got about 8.5 million of unmet restaurant demand, and I feel like we'd be a great fit for Chili's. We've noticed your closest unit is 25 miles away in Madison. Can I get 10 minutes of your time to show you our community and 2 sites that I feel will interest you? So we've done a couple of things here. We focused on the trade area population. How many people live in the retail trade area? We focused on what retailers are already there. We focused on $8.5 million in unmet demand. And then for Chili's, we identified their closest location. So make sure you have this pitch refined, you have this pitch ready to go as you get through the presentation, as you get through your meeting or through your presentation to these retailers. Number 8 deals with targeting as well. Go ahead and send out emails. Look up the attendees, find out who's attending, send out emails, and make calls as well, and invite them to meet with you. Ask them if they have time at ICSC Recon to meet with you. Those communities that are the most successful at ICSC Recon are those communities that have meetings set up ahead of time. You cannot just plan to go out there and attend. You have to have meetings set up ahead of time. Can't stress that enough. The sooner you begin, the better. You probably needed to start about a month ago, but if you're just now getting started, that's okay. Start today and start reaching out to these retailers and developers. If you don't get a response, don't stress about it. Figure out where that retailer, that developer you're reaching out to, find out where their booth is, find out who the contact is for your region, and go talk to them. Walk up to their booth. It might take 3 or 4 times at the show for you to actually get to meet with them, but just be persistent. Keep walking up, keep asking to meet with the targeted retailer. Number 9 continues with targeting, but create a hit list of prospects you want to visit at Recon. Put together a list of 20 to 25 retailers, and at some point make it a point to stop by their booth or at least have a meeting with them. Mentioned this in the beginning, but pay close attention to hall location and floor address. It can get confusing out there. The booth numbers are very long, and it's just a confusing place the way it's set up. So make sure you've mapped out your time and your space ahead of time where you're headed, and then work the floor methodically. Identify the site selector for your area. Get business cards and the site selection criteria. Many of these retailers will have little flyers or sheets at their booth that says what they're looking for in a community, where they're expanding, what that customer profile looks for. So make sure you get that so you can take it back home with you and you can follow up down the road. Just to emphasize here, the most productive time to drop in and meet with retailers if you do not have a meeting is Wednesday, from about 8 to noon. The conference on Wednesday goes from 8 to 2 o'clock, but I'll tell you about 1 o'clock or so, everybody starts taking their booth down. So the most productive time is Wednesday from 8 to noon. Make sure you stick around for that part of the conference, because that'll be your best chance at, if you don't have a meeting, actually getting to speak with someone. Can't stress this enough, but follow-up is key. I mentioned that you're not going to make a deal out in Vegas, but you're going to make connections and contacts. I had somebody tell me a long time ago, it's not necessarily about what you know, but it's about who you know, and that's extremely that's so true in the retail, especially the retail real estate industry. So go out there, you're making a connection, so that when a spot becomes available, or you hear retailers expanding in your area, you have a connection, you've met that person before. If you met with a prospect, whether it was a planned meeting or it was a drop-in, make sure and email them a thank you note. I like to do it on the same day. And make sure you at least do it during the same week. But follow up with a thank you note, just once again to stay fresh in the minds of these retailers. And if it's applicable, have that site-specific information available. If you're meeting with Chili's and they say, hey, we're looking for a 2-acre site in your community along this corridor, by the time they get back to their office, have sites available for them. Nowadays, you're competing with retailers, or you're competing with communities all over your state, all over the country for retailers and developers. So anything you can do to speed up the selection process, find sites for them, get the information they need quickly, that is key. And then name recognition is important. Keep your name and your community in front of the prospects. Retailers might not be interested now, but 6 months from now, or a year from now, they could be interested. So don't get upset. Don't try to push it too hard. If a retailer says they're not interested, say you understand. Say, hey, I'm going to contact you in 6 months. Just to see where you're at on this process. But be persistent. Don't be pesky. Many times it's a slow process, but it works. And I told a community this yesterday, but retail recruitment is not a one-time event. It is not a single event that happens for a year. If you are going to focus on retail recruitment, it needs to be a long-term process. It could take from a meeting you have at ICSC RECON in a couple of weeks. It could take 3 to 4 years, before that retailer locates. Typically, it's a 6 to 18-month process for a retailer to locate. So you've got to make sure and look at this really as a process. So before we get to the summary, I want to answer just a real quick question. We had a question from one of our attendees that asked, how do you determine the retail trade area? And that's a great question. Retailers, or let me say this, as communities, your retail trade area is always going to be larger than your city limits. I don't care if you're a community of 2,000 or you're a community of 200,000. Your retail trade area is where you are pulling customers from. It's your draw area. And that is key. When you're talking to these retailers, they're not going to care about your city limits population. They're going to care about your retail trade area population. So there's several ways to do that. There are radials. You can drop a circle over your community and say how many people live within a 3-mile radius. Or you can drop a drive time map over your community and say how many people live within a drive time. I will tell you, drive times and radials are becoming a thing of the past as far as retail trade areas go. Scary to think about, but we now have access to cell phone data. So we can do a cell phone analysis to find out where consumers are coming from that are shopping in your community. So we're able to plot on a map where these households are that are shopping in your community. So a cell phone analysis is a very strong way to do a license to do a retail trade area. There's also a license plate analysis tool that we developed where we can go in and we can scan a license plate of anybody shopping in your community and tie it back to their home address. That's also powerful information. But having that information combined with looking at competition in the area, where is your closest competition? That's how you determine a trade area. But make sure you make sure you hand draw your trade area. Like I said, radials and drive times are becoming a thing of the past. Retailers really want to see custom polygon trade areas. And if there's other questions on trade areas, I'll answer it after this webinar. Just reach out to us. But just to summarize here, make sure you conduct your research. Make sure you have marketing materials prepared. Those of you that are on this call with us, or on this webinar with us, if you are a client, we have your marketing materials ready to go, and we'll be sending those over shortly with the new data. Identify the retailers, the brokers, and the developers that are active in your region. Number 4, attempt to set appointments at RECON. Do your best. You've got about a month to do that, so get on that today. And then develop a strategy for visiting the prospects at their booth. If you're unable to secure that meeting, find out where their booth is. And then I can't stress it enough, but follow up, and follow up. So that is key. I think that's going to be our last slide. I put on this last slide here the email address I talked about, info@theretailcoach.net. If there's any questions after we finalize this webinar, feel free to give us a call. We are also in the process of recording this webinar, so if you have council members or board members that are going to the conference with you, and you'd like them to get a copy of this webinar, just shoot us an email, and I think we're planning on sending out the recording as well to everyone. So I think it's key to make sure not just yourselves, but your council members and your board members are prepared for the conference, know what to expect. Once again, manage expectations. We've had a few other questions come in here. One of the questions was, what is the attire out at the conference? I will tell you, you will see people wearing all different types of things. For men, I think really it's business casual to professional is usually the attire that we see at the conference. I know for the retail coach, we will be business professional. We might not have a tie on, but most of your developers that are out there, most of them will be in full suits. You'll see some communities out there that'll have a logo shirt with their logo of the community on there. So just be prepared. I know it's hot out there, but it is professional dress for the conference. Make sure to focus on this. I just had my team tell me we will be sending the recorded link out as part of this after this. So follow up with an email so you can send it out to your board members and maybe other communities are attending that would like to see this. So really, if there's no other questions, we appreciate your time here. Feel free to reach out to us if we can help in any way. If you don't have 2016 data yet, get with us so we can get you that immediately. But really want to thank you for joining us. And once again, our booth number in Vegas is N2028U. We're still scheduling meetings at our booth if you'd like to meet with us, so get with us. And thanks again. We'll talk to you soon, and hopefully you can join us on webinars in the future.